Mike Rooney. Today's free art lesson's on focal points. If you're painting a picture, you're telling a story. So if you don't know what the focal point is or you don't know what the story is, it's hard to convey it to the person that's viewing it. So focal points are crucial to be able to tell the person what they should be looking at. There was something when you went out there, like I'm a plein air artist, and when I'm walking around or driving around looking for a scene, I basically just drive until something stops me in my tracks. And there's something about that scene that makes me want to paint it. That's the focal point. Whether it be the way the light's bouncing off the side of a building, the sky's really, really dark blue, like a really cool blue, and all of a sudden there's this seafood house or boat house or shrimp shack or something, and there's that light bouncing off of that building, and it's just so warm and light compared to the sky. So what we need to do is have a refresher. All of us as artists, we've heard about focal points since we probably first picked up a pencil. But the thing is, when we're outside painting, or whether it be in the studio, sometimes we're so interested and consumed with getting this image up here that we kind of forget the reason that we're doing it. So let me just go back and review, how to make the focal point what the person looks at when they look at the painting. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw a couple basic shapes, and let's just say that I'm painting this house, and there's a row of trees behind this house, and there's a blue sky, and let's say there's a little pond in front of the house and a field, okay? We're going to make sure, okay, let's say that we're walking around and we see this, we come upon this scene, we say, oh, I love the way that light's hitting that house. Let me show you how you put all the center of attention on that house. First, whenever I'm painting, I always start with magenta. For some reason, I like to color in with magenta and kind of tone the canvas and get rid of the white. Do my drawing with it also. I'm just going to do a small one. I'm not going to do this whole thing. I just want to show you how to keep the focal point the main thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw a square here, and we're going to say, let's say that the pond is over here, and then up here somewhere is a house. All right, we're just going to draw a little house on there, and this is all field, blah blah blah. I tell you what, let's make it. There's some trees behind here, okay, and that's the sky. So we got the house and the pond and the field. Okay, now we know that the reason we did this was because the house was being hit by light on this side right here, and it was really, really white and yellow. And we loved the way that looked against the whole scene because everything else was kind of middle to dark values. So let's just stroke in a couple things real quick. The way I always do it, and kind of give you a little mini lesson while I'm doing it too about underpainting, is I always break this down into 3 values. So I look and I say, now what's going to be the lightest value? The lightest value is going to be the thing that caught my attention. It's going to be the front of that house. So that's going to be the lightest thing. What's the second lightest thing on this whole scene? Probably the sky. So what I do is I just take thinner and just really, really make it a wash, and I make a really, really light wash. Really light, and that's almost too much. I'll take all that, and you can wipe it off. And I just want to tint that canvas. I don't want any white. So I like to have it like a nice light pink, since I said the sky was going to be cool. So I know that this is the lightest value, and this is the second to the lightest value. Probably the third lightest value is this water. So I just kind of look. You can just kind of pick some of that up and stroke it across. Now, what is the darkest value? Probably the darkest value, and that's when I add a little bit of cobalt violet to my magenta. The darkest value is the trees. So I go in there and I make kind of a bloody, it's kind of a blood red. It's cobalt and magenta, and I say that this is the darkest value, and I just stroke that in. And it's probably really dark on this roof too. Okay, so I just stroke that blood red magenta in there real quick to tell myself, hey, this is the darkest value. So I know my trees are the darkest value. Now the key, the points of keeping the focal point to focal point is to have The greatest value changes here, right in this area, have the greatest value changes, have the most, the difference between grays and chromatic or straight out of the tube, or some people say saturated. You want the biggest differences right around here. You want very few differences the further out that it gets from your focal point. So if here's your focal point, think of it as throwing a stone in the water. Here's your focal point, the stone hits here. You want all the attention here, and as you make rings, you know how when you throw stone in the water, it makes rings? Well, the further away that the rings get, the less attention you want. So you want all the attention in the bullseye. So right here, I want all the attention. So I'm going to have my darkest dark run up on my lightest light right there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go in here and make a color for the field. I'm just going to put some magenta down for that, just so I got something to paint on top of. And look how nicely it's got rid of all the white on the canvas. Now I'm going to real quickly, I'm going to go in there. I gave a little free art lesson on palette 101, and one of the things I said was be sure you scrape this palette off and get it nice and clean before you change colors. So that's what I'm doing. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a larger brush so I can go ahead and get color in there really quick. I'm going to say, what's my lightest light? So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to take white, add a little bit of Naples yellow to it to warm it up, make it a really nice warm white. I'm going to load that up, and I'm just going to one stroke it on there. Okay, so I'm going to one stroke a little house on there. Now that's my lightest light. Now my darkest dark, which I like to work, because especially right here, if I paint around the focal point, I can get loose everywhere else. Where's my darkest dark going to be? It's going to be right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take green and add cobalt violet to it. It makes a really, really nice dark green. I'm going to make it almost black. Really dark in value. Okay, and what that's doing too, it's cutting some of the out of the tube saturation too. So I'm going to lay some of that right there. Then I'm going to go in there. I'm going to put a little bit more in different places. Just kind of paint that in. Now I'm just making this up out of my head. It's not going to be a great painting, but I'm just trying to show you how to keep the focal point to focal point. So that's my lightest light and my darkest dark. So you're going to look there before you look anywhere else. Now I can go in there and paint everything else in really quickly and make sure that I keep all the attention right there. So let's say I go in and put some sky blue. I'm going to take some sky blue, add a little ultramarine blue to it. And I'm going to stroke that in real quick over top of that magenta. And I let parts of it show. Isn't that cool? Let parts of that magenta show. Now I'm going to go in there, I'm going to put, let's say, I'm going to make up the light side of the tree, so I'm going to take sap green, add a little bit of that cadmium yellow. I'm going to knock down the intensity with a little bit of gray that I keep from my scrapings. When I scrape this palette, I put it in a pile, I call it my gray, and I'm going to use some of that gray to cut down on the intensity of this green. So I'm going to put a little bit of red to knock it down even more. I'm going to one stroke that across there real quick. And see, it soaks in, that magenta soaked in, but you get these nice little red peaks shining through. So I'll go back in and I'll put another little bit of little light blue right here. That's the water. Then the side of the house is right there, and then you probably got a little bit of blue. Kill it with some orange. The blue in the complement is orange, so I'm going to make like a slate gray rooftop and put it in there, and then I'm going to add a little bit of red to that green that I had and add a little bit of mud to it, and I'm going to let this be my top of my trees. There we go. That's like the light side of the trees or whatnot. Let's go back in and get that slate gray back in there. We lost some of that. All right. So as you can see now, I can go in and I can lighten. Let's lighten this at the bottom of the sky and make it look a little bit more realistic. Now look how your eye goes right to that spot, because I've got the lightest light and the darkest dark right next to each other. And that is going to carry, that's always going to bring your eye to that spot. As long as I keep that, I can put a little bit on the other side too. And I'll make that house stand out even more. Now what you want to do over here is you don't want as many value changes and stuff over here. You want to keep them really soft, so you want to blur edges. That's another thing. You want your hardest edges at the focal point. So it's the hardest edges, the biggest value differences, and the most chromatic difference. So there you go. That's how you keep the focal point to focal point. My story is this house sitting there against those trees. I hope you've enjoyed this lesson today. If you'd like to find out more about me, you can go to MikeRooneyStudios.blogspot.com.